Hi, welcome everybody. Uh, Welcome to today's IABAC webinar uh, hosted by Rubix. And today's we have Mr. Anshul Sonak from Intel. I'll give you a brief description about his experience and his the kind of work he does. Mr. Anshul is the Senior Director, Global AI and Digital Readiness with the Global Partnerships and the Initiatives Group at Intel Singapore. He is very passionate about technology innovation and changing skills with respect to jobs, youth empowerment, education, transformation, and reducing inequality. He's a trusted advisor to governments and civil society and academia for building new transformational models. He also gives keynotes in multiple governments and multilateral forums like UNDP, UNESCO, UN, ESCAP, ADB, USAID. He's also the United Nations Development Program Asia's first youth collab champion, and he's also the global judge at MIT's Solve program. So without ado, I hand it over to Mr. Anshul to give his presentation.
Hey, thank you, Ram. Thank you, IABC, for inviting me in this wonderful opportunity. So all the audiences, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in your home or office, I hope all of you are safe and doing well. I'm going to talk a little bit about Intel and what we are doing for democratizing AI skills, the importance of that work and how we want to approach it, how we are approaching it, and hopefully a role all of you can play at a broader movement level for democratizing AI skill. I am sensitive and conscious of the fact that you are all real technologists. I am not. I happen to be one of the rare principal engineer in Intel without engineering degree. So in that sense, I am honored to talk to all of you. Luxury of my job is to really share various models of building more and more emerging technology skills like AI for a broader population, typically a non-techie population, and the value of technology for the broader world and the broader workforce, and how it can help people, governments, industry, academia, and then help them build a tangible models and programs and partnerships and things like that. So from that standpoint, I'm going to just share some of our learnings and some of our initiatives and programs so that you have a perspective about AI skills, what's going on, and how should we be thinking about the broader issues and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm going to cover. But before that, I mean, just to be true to Intel, I want to kind of give you a very quick perspective of where we are coming from and why this is an important topic for us and why it's an important topic for all of you, whichever industry you may be in, as a business analyst or data scientist or a general technologist audience or a general interested folks. Intel, as you know, as a semiconductor company, we say that we bring silicon in Silicon Valley, right? Because we make silicons, and making silicon is extremely innovation driven, very complex process, as you can imagine. Silicon comes from sand to silicon, and really going through that process of innovation is a magic in itself, right? And I mean, that's what we do for our bread and butter. Purpose of our companies create world-changing technologies using that silicon that enriches life of every person on earth. And then from an aspiration, vision standpoint, we want to be truly a trusted performance leader that help unleash the potential of data, because we are all in a data-centric world, and we are seeing all kinds of data explosion around us. So how do we really make sure? I mean, today, as you know, probably only 1% of data is meaningfully getting used for human impact, societal impact in a more responsible way. So there's so much more can be done, right? If you really demystify data science and AI and the broader AI related innovation for all people, for the broader set of folks. So from that standpoint, there's a lot to be done beyond just thinking about this as a technology industry issue. You may be in any sector and any level of career. It still requires a lot of democratization of these issues. So that's the reason we kind of look at this topic and prioritize this. Uh, Technology, I mean, especially of in last couple of years with COVID, right? We say that the digitalization has accelerated by 7 years. What would have taken 7 years has happened now in just last 1 year. So 7x acceleration has actually happened, right? We are talking about compute and hence the silicon in some sense, right? Becoming extremely pervasive as the whole world becomes digital, right? We are talking of mobile everything, network everything, cloud everything, and intelligent edge, smart factory, smart car, smart home, smart learning, right? And which will require a very different way of thinking about your data and then organizing the intelligence, the way you collect data, the way you process data, the way you store data, all that stuff, right? So the role of technology and technologists and the geeks, this is a good time to be in. I think, but the world need much more than that. World need everybody to kind of have some understanding, some literacy about this topic, right? And that is an issue which is quite closer to our heart as we define these big disruptions together with industry and the world, right? And some of these big technologies like AI, connectivity, cloud, 5G connectivity, I mean, intelligent edge, smart factories, and everything else, right? The disruption is happening. That the question which comes back to us is how do we prepare a larger ecosystem of a larger societal level data scientists, citizen data scientists, to really have a right mindset and the right skill set to be ready for this bigger disruption. Otherwise, a lot of you may know the industry is kind of using today's technology in a very smaller ways, right? I mean, AI, for example, 50% post-COVID, 50% of the world organizations, the big companies want to use it, right? But only 4 to 5% people are actually being able to use it. There's a lot of gap between what you want to do at an organizational transformation level, be it for product, proficiency, whichever goals you may have, right? Versus the actual usage. So sometimes people then start suspecting, okay, is this just a promise? Is this just a hype? And I mean, the technology is never just a promise or a hype. It's what you do with that disruption, what you do with that technology, which kind of changes the equation, right? So I think that's the key point to note. And purely from our own business standpoint as Intel, of course, we offer a lot of ingredient technologies which carries a silicon, right, across the spectrum. And it goes into multiple range of hardware, software, and so on and so forth. So again, I'm not going to detail of what Intel does from a business standpoint. It's all up over there in public knowledge. You have to just visit Intel website and see it. But Intel has a range of solutions for the entire spectrum of compute, as we say, right? And the way we kind of build our own innovation engine, and Moore's law is a classical example, right? And a lot of people kind of are challenging the Moore's law only from one standpoint, but the potential of Moore's law is not just from going from 7 nanometer to 5 nanometer. That's not the only thing here. That's the important thing. But it's basically an empirical way to think how can you bring innovation at a much more torrid pace, right, for humanity. And for that, I mean, with silicon and platform, you need software, you need packaging, you need processes, you need scale manufacturing to build that entire innovation engine, which will bring next generation of innovation. But the question is, where are the next generation innovators? If you're thinking about it. I mean, that kind of brings to the point of you need to think about bringing people and data together in a more responsible way, right? For the next generation of innovators and not just next generation of innovation, because that's not going to happen on its own if we do not foster talent, fuel next generation of innovators, right? So from that standpoint, of course, we have our own corporate strategic goals. I mean, and in our corporate responsibility, of course, this topic comes out very often. And again, I'm not going to go into the detail of our corporate strategy and the corporate responsibility strategy. It's called RISE goal: responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and enabling. If you have interest, you can go through that from our website. But just one aspect which is relevant to this conversation today is what I'm going to focus on: inclusive aspect. How do we make sure that technology is fully inclusive And how do we make sure that we are truly expanding digital readiness for all, right, which is required for digitalization to succeed? Because for the larger economic gain of the society and government and businesses and academia, just handing over technology will not be enough. You have to expand digital readiness. That's where the AI readiness and democratization of AI skill comes in very, very handy. Uh, so it's all eventually boils down to people and partnership from that essence. And as you think about this, the broader workforce across industries, which is seeing transformation. It's not just the data scientist which is seeing transformation. It's not just business analyst which is seeing the transformation. The larger businesses are getting transformation. Be it any business, be it healthcare business, it's what's going on right now in last 1 year with COVID, manufacturing, education, retail, hospitality. The transformation is all out there. I mean, either you disrupt your own business model and move forward, or the shelf life of Fortune 500 company, the half life of Fortune 500 company is a very strong indicator how brutal the environment can be, right? The half life of Fortune 500 companies have kind of from 20 year to 12 year, and now it's kind of less than 10 years. So every 10 year now you're seeing 50% of Fortune 500 companies disappearing from the list. So that's the world we are living in. I mean, there are many ways to paraphrase it. You may be coming from, again, different levels, right? That doesn't matter. The question here is disruption is going to stay. What can we do about it to be on top of it, right? And that's why making this bold mission of democratizing AI skill, expanding digital readiness for all people, making technology truly inclusive becomes an important portion. Uh, the way we define this whole notion of digital readiness for people, right, which is important step for democratizing AI skills, not just for technical manpower like data scientists and AI professionals and IT engineers and computer science professionals, but for a wider set of population. Because this wider set of population, whether you and I like it or not, they will decide the business's success, right? We can do what we are doing as technologists, but the wider success of your business and sustainability in the long run is dependent on the future workforce, future businesses, right? So from that standpoint, these three key parameters to consider when we say expand digital readiness for all or democratize this. You need more skills for sure. You need more trust. And the trust on technology is a big topic, as some of you know, right? With lot what has happened in last 3-4 years with Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, multiple other examples, right? Across the region. I mean, Europe has now a whole GDPR just to kind of protect people's privacy. How do we make sure that people trust technology in a more appropriate way, right? So privacy, control, security, all these issues are coming to more forefront. So, I mean, cybersecurity is a great career to be in today's time, definitely, along with AI and ML and all that stuff, right? So that's why the trust plays a very equal part along with technology, right? And I'm talking trust from a broader sense. And then third, and the most important in that sense, innovation doesn't care what you learn. Innovation only care what you do with your learning. So it's not so much about what you are learning, what certificate, what degree you have, what are you actually doing with it? How are you implementing it? How agile you are in implementing it? Those kind of stuff. So responsible usage. And the responsible usage, there is a velocity and agility aspect, and there's a responsibility aspect, right? Because in today's world, the businesses are also being measured by how responsible you are for the planet, for the climate, for people, all that. And if you are not, then again, the wave of disruption will take you out of your businesses. Again, Fortune 500 shelf life is a good indication of that, right? Or half-life is a great indication of that topic. How companies come and companies go, right? So it's a much bigger leadership topic in that sense, which kind of combines people skilling, people trusting, and people responsibly using it, right? So that's what we want to kind of bring it on table for wider audiences. And I mean, in that context, we have to really think about how do we explain AI as an example when we say democratize AI to a wider set of people. AI, of course, is a technology, and it's a collection of technology. I mean, In Intel, we call it as an umbrella technology because then you can protect and can have many things. I went to MIT, I think 4 years back, yeah, and did a course. And one of the great professor over there call it as a suitcase technology. I mean, suitcase technologies, you can put in many things inside your suitcase, right? And then you just describe your suitcase from outside. What is inside it, nobody understand, but they understand suitcase. So in a way, there is a lot of mysticism when we talk of a larger businesses, not just you as an individual or you as a company who may understand this, but think about your customers, think about your suppliers, think about your peers. How do they understand it, right? So from that standpoint, we have to really demystify and explain that it's not just a technology, it's not just a suitcase of technology. It's definitely a form of intelligence, form of thinking, right? Given this whole disruption, and how do we really recalibrate, reconfigure, revitalize entire economic new order, right, with AI and COVID all hitting together in that sense, double disruption. Uh, Technologists will know that hey, there is a broad AI and there's a narrow AI, and a lot out there is a very narrow AI, but we are moving very, very fast into this broader AI space, right? And that kind of puts a lot of tension on professionals. How do I continuously keep myself updated, right, as the technology itself is moving with the goalpost? And very interestingly, I mean, it's a very classical argument which we go in philosophical debate: AI professional versus software professional, right? uh, it's a silly argument, by the way. I don't believe in that. Yeah, but people say that okay, anything once AI is there, it becomes a software, it's all out there, right? Then what are you actually building? Software is out there, right? So successful technologies are often, once it becomes mainstream, it just becomes a software, right? So it again puts up a heavy stress to reskill as an AI professional to really kind of understand the bigger algorithmic thinking and kind of continuously up the game, right? So that you have true, career longevity, the impact, whatever you care, right? As an AI professional in a true sense. So because it's always a moving goalpost in that sense, and there's always a hype around it. Now, purely from a job market standpoint, and which I'm sure a lot of you understand, it's there in every economy, right? And we do a mapping of that very often. I'm part of a larger government affairs team, and one of the things which we do is map out which countries have prioritized AI skilling issue beyond just tech industry and beyond just big colleges or universities, the premium universities. So how are you really increasing the base to prepare for your long-term national competitiveness? Because solutions of today and tomorrow will require AI skill, but then where are people? So that's why typically the AI skills gap is often in any survey or any indicator you pick, be it future of job indicator or LinkedIn top 20 skills, take any indicator and you will find AI skills as one of the top skills. But when you map it to jobs, it becomes interesting. There are AI jobs, there are other jobs, right? And all kinds of other jobs, but all other jobs are becoming digital jobs. All other jobs, be it in healthcare or legal or medical or media, whichever area you pick, those jobs are becoming digital lawyer job, digital media job, digital healthcare jobs, right? And hence, you don't have to necessarily have a PhD in AI or a data science graduation degree, but you have to think about, okay, any professional who goes into that mainstream non-technical workforce, they should still have a basic AI literacy. And hence democratizing or demystifying AI for them is an important imperative for their success, but more importantly, your success and your current business successes, right? And hence we always put this on a table that treat this as a leadership agenda rather than just an IT department agenda. I think that's a very important point here. If you're thinking about building a long-term future with AI, right? The way, I mean, purely from a job market standpoint, right? I mean, I'm kind of simplifying for all of you to think, right? 50% of the world task today. I mean, I am a future of job expert in Intel, and so I kind of study what work task, what happens to workforce, and what happens to workplace in that sense, right? But just on the work task, which kind of in collection create a job, right? So at a macro level, and country to country figures are different, but at a macro level, 50% of the work task around the world can be automated with just today's technology. Now that is a huge repercussion for the way we organize our work, right? And especially with COVID, as I said, 7 years of digitalization getting accelerated in 1 year, the economic pressure, the bottom line pressure, the business pressure will only push that digitalization. So there is definitely a pressure to kind of use this opportunity and take more and more automation, right? Because today we have technology capability to automate 50% of world tasks. But the jobs are not just tasks, it's a collection of tasks, right? So we have to think about, okay, how do we really reconfigure jobs, and how do we make sure when we talk about democratization of AI skill, all kinds of jobs get prepared and not just some select jobs, right? And that's a true transformation. I mean, as you think about your own careers and or your own businesses, wherever you're coming from, academic positions, government positions, how do you do your own transformation from a pure technology position to this broader leadership position, right? As we think about future of job. Some examples are there in the slide, right? I mean, the way I paraphrase it, and this is nothing new, again, a very common way of defining future of work. Work tasks require hand, so agriculture job, automobile job as an example. AI is coming in with manual capabilities getting automated. A lot of job which require brain, cognitive capability. Some examples are there, medical jobs, legal jobs. Those are kind of infusing AI at a very high speed across the world, right? And those jobs are also changing rapidly. And the third one, and very interesting one, and those jobs which require more heart, more care, more empathy. And if you don't have that job carefully defined, then the biases start creeping in. And that's why you see lots of issues around the world right now around trust on AI, right? Because these jobs which require affective capabilities, right? That job, we need to be careful of what kind of biases can distort the picture. And again, there are lots of examples of nursing, insurance, so on and so forth, right? On that, what we do from Intel standpoint to address this, as we engage with the government and academia and industries, we offer a bouquet of our own digital readiness solutions, which are all partnership programs. These programs are like a public-private partnership program or a shared value program. So in simple words, we don't sell this program, or it's not like a commercial sale to any customer or government or academia or our partners or suppliers. We give them the content and the training and technology insights, but then ask them to kind of own it up and really go and implement it. And I will give you some examples of these programs. We want to align it with this broader democratization of AI skills for the national competitiveness goals at a country level. So that's why the role of government and academia and the local industry tech ecosystem plays a very important role over there. And that's why you see some of the government goals: more education, more employability, more entrepreneurship and employment, more economic growth. They map it to the audience needs, different audience. How about public in itself? I think as we kind of go into this larger next 10 year, 20 year of transformation of jobs and industries, a general public trust on what you and I do as a technologist or as a data scientist or an AI professional, public awareness will be very critical, because there is already a lot of suspicion, a lot of watchdogs and those approaches. So one of the things which we do is AI for Citizen for public awareness programs. Then we recognize that, as I said earlier, this kind of skills are coming late at the age group, more at a undergraduate and the graduate degree, and then at an actual industry work level. And by that time, a lot of people do not have hunger left to learn. So you kind of just form your own fixed mindset. So if from an education pedagogy standpoint, if you want to address that atrophy or the inequality on skill, you need to start earlier. You need to kind of bring, you need to make data science as a sexier topic, so to say. You need to make AI as a glamorous topic at an earlier age group. So we have a program, AI for Youth, which kind of addresses these skills at a high school level. Then the workforce. future workforce and the current workforce. The future workforce is all the colleges, technical schools, and so on and so forth. Right? The current workforce is a much bigger topic right now after COVID around the world. Right? As businesses go through a lot of economic pressures because of COVID, and they want to automate very, very quickly. Either businesses have started to close down, especially the public sector businesses and public sector supported businesses like SME, micro SMEs, and people, organizations who are otherwise not having enough muscle power, financial muscle power, and the learning muscle power, right? So the pressure on them is huge to very quickly upskill their, at-risk workforce, the workforce which is there, but which is at risk of automation displacement. Then there's a whole second category of workforce, which is very big around the world right now, who have already lost jobs. I mean, country like Singapore, where I live, they have a huge focus from government and academia to offer lifelong learning solutions to people who have lost jobs to kind of then get reskilled on totally new skills like AI and data science. Now, statistically, it's very staggering. I mean, for one male, maybe 3 females are losing jobs, right? Thanks to COVID and automation worldwide. Just in US, last quarter, almost 150,000 people lost job, mostly women. Because those are the people who will do jobs which is more front end, which is more fragile, and which is more prone to automation risk in that sense. So if we do not help them upskill and reskill, we come at risk in that sense. Your businesses, right, or your organization work eventually is dependent on the larger societal success. So current workforce reskilling and upskilling, that will become a very important or a critical agenda, so to say. In our scheme of thinking, because we work with the governments and academia a lot, educating and orienting them on all these emerging technologies around AI, like machine learning, deep learning, so on and so forth, data science, that itself require a lot of focus, because a lot of time, as you would know, and some of you are already working maybe in academia and governments, right? These are all good topics to talk, but when you have to take an RFP decision or a solution decision, very often otherwise you have to trust on somebody who's really an expert. But if you start knowing the fundamentals of, let's say, what is NLP or what is computer vision and things like that, the basics of AI, then you are far better equipped to kind of take right call or a right business decision. So kind of equipping the leaders on emerging technology is also equally an important programmatic approach for us. So these are some of the programs which we do for democratizing AI skill. I want to just use time to kind of give you a picture, and then if you have any interest, you can reach out to us. We typically work with the government or the bigger industry customer partners in that sense for all these program rollouts in countries. And I will give you which all countries we are right now doing it. We have 15 countries so far where we are working on this. But coming back to the topic now on the democratizing part, I want to just give you small examples of how we are working on democratizing this, right? And if you want to kind of replicate some of this, or you want to talk to us and kind of share the knowledge exchange, feel free to reach out to us. So AI for citizen, which is probably the very, very key starting point for public trust, right? Many countries, again, have started talking about building citizen awareness on AI, right? But then how is a big question. You have to have a very campaign-driven, systematic approach by government, academia, and businesses to really reach out to the wider population. And you can take your own, targeted niche population approach, the audience which you care, right? From your own industry standpoint, maybe your suppliers and your customers, and really simplify AI for them. I'm just sharing with you an example of what we do in the Singapore government actually as AI for citizens. So Institute of Technical Education host all our programs. There is 2 digital batches for any ordinary citizen. It can be my mother or my wife who's nothing to do with AI, for them to really learn what is AI to a basic layman extent. So there are 2 batches to it. It's roughly a 4 hours of experience, batching experience, digital batching experience. AI aware and AI appreciate. AI aware just gives you a basic idea in a simple gamified way. What is AI? What AI can do? What AI cannot do? and AI appreciation will give you a little bit more about how to think about it for my own life, for my job. If in future I want to learn about AI, what should I be thinking about? So a very basic elementary approach, which an ordinary person, as I said, it can be my mother or my wife, right, who may not be a technologist, for them to think and do. So that's like an approach which we have taken. So this is, I mean, just in Singapore as an example, right? As we speak, more than 5,000 people have completed this. We are not doing anything. It's government who's kind of taking it, putting it in their own government campaigns and portal and kind of taking it forward. But again, I mean, there's a lot to be done. I mean, for creating a right public awareness. So, I mean, we are now very seriously working with multiple country governments to replicate this model for the broader public to kind of have a right understanding on AI as a topic. The second program, which I want to show a small video. This is for the high schools. So because I talked earlier that typically when you do the talent mapping, I mean, and we learned a lot about this from a country like China, who's now bringing in AI at a primary school level. I don't know whether there's an audience from China in this webinar, but China did a fantastic job, very aggressive. So country like India, where I come from, we started at a high school level. So I'm going to show you some examples of that, of how people are using it. But there are countries now, I mean, South Korea has taken it to middle school level. China has gone and taken it to primary level. So they're really serious in expanding the canvas of this whole AI thing to the broader STEM, to the broader computational thinking, and expanding beyond computational thinking to algorithmic thinking, data science literacy, stuff like that. So this is where the world is headed in that sense, to build a literacy around topics like this. I just want to show you a small video. I hope the sound is clear, and then I'll give you a couple of impact examples of this.
AI for Youth is an immersive hands-on learning journey based on experiential methodologies covering social and technology skills. It enables youth to build a relevant AI mindset with required skill sets and tool sets. Intel initiated AI for Youth program in India, Poland, and Korea in 2019. The curriculum focuses on key concepts related to AI data, natural language processing, or NLP, and computer vision, and how youth can apply them to create meaningful social impact projects. The youth can also learn core skills such as problem solving, creative thinking, self-reflection, and develop their knowledge on AI ethics, privacy concerns, and AI biases.
As a part of this whole process, Intel has partnered us, and in fact, we are very, very grateful for their support.
Democratizing AI skills, right, at a high school level. I want to give you one or two actual examples of what I have seen, right, really opened up my eye. So I was traveling to India last year, and I met this couple of girls, or actually 3 girls, typical 16-year-old, grade 10 girls. And the problem they identified in their own life is grade 10, there's a lot of mental depression, high-stake exam, girls coming from very diverse communities and things like that. So these girls used computer vision and some of the AI coding skills to create their or tweak the algorithm to predict mental depression among their classmates, right? A 16-year-old girl using computer vision to predict mental depression is a cool starting point. But then we challenge them, okay, so what? You know, that is not enough. You're creating an algorithm, but how are you going to use it? So then they went beyond their own classroom creation of this algorithm for predicting mental depression. They got it validated with the school psychologist and some experts from Intel, and now they are starting to implement it with almost 85 to 86% efficacy in the community schools. There are 6 community schools which are using it to predict which girl is going through a lot of stress, based on the computer vision techniques, and then alert them and alert school teacher to have a conversation so that teachers can offer a timely help. And this particular girl who identified this problem, she said that she had a senior who actually did a suicide because of mental depression. And nobody knew that mental depression exists among that age group. So that's what made her pause and reflect and say, what can I do with AI, right? So to me, I mean, the reason why I'm telling you this real story is this is where we want world to be, right? When we say democratize AI skill, not just learn the skill, but apply the skill in your own real life context. And I mean, the role which you all can play as a true professionals, right? Spread the word, right? It's not about just our careers and our life. It's for all of us as a whole society. Democratizing AI skill is going to become more and more critical for our own mutual success. Just in this program, the kind of skills which we cover, you can see on my slide. I'm not going to read it. It's a very busy slide. We induct people on AI skill in a very easier way through gamified activities and things like that, where we bring a lot of AI ethical issues and stuff like that. But then at the next stage, we take them to true AI fundamentals. So AI project cycle, data science principles. And this I'm talking of a typical high school, 15-year-old, 15, 16-year-old. Then if the school already has Python and coding programming, great. Otherwise, we give them optional material, additional material for Python and coding programming skills. And then they go through building AI specific concepts. And then they have a choice of picking one of the three branches which we offer: statistical data branch, which will have machine learning, deep learning, and all that techniques, computer vision branch, and then natural language processing branch. It's very fascinating actually to see how different cultures take up different things. There are some cultures which are very numerical. They want to just sit and do things. So they will take more and more statistical data related, branch and build their own technical competencies on that. There are some cultures, and especially in this part of the region, which is very visual learner, using mobile, take picture, put it on Insta, things like that. They are very computer vision driven people, right? And then there are serious people who want to build NLP solutions and stuff like that, right? I mean, so all kinds of audiences. And what we are learning is culture and your own inclusion background plays a big role in this. So as a true professional in this space, that's something which all of us need to pay more and more attention to really make it more inclusive, because people may have a different biases and different understanding and different ways of learning. So what aspect of data science and AI they may want to learn first, right? And how do we introduce a very complex topic like AI to, totally uninitiated kind of a people? I think that is a topic which is very, provoking and also very satisfying for us. And as you kind of build these capabilities for yourself, which I know most of you have, but for your organization and for your larger, beyond your organization, in your country, in your context of communities and things like that, that becomes very critical. And just to complete the learning journey part of it, right? Take them to empower stage, whereby then they actually build solutions like what I described. So that's in the AI for Youth program. Then we take the same argument to the vocational school, technical schools, to a much more serious level, right? For by a vocational student, a typical 20-year-old, 21-year-old, who may be building a career into something else like healthcare or manufacturing or automobile, but for them to have AI literacy also, right? So I'm going to show you again one example of, a very, very basic example of what typical 18, 19-year-old can do with AI, right? Once you equip them with the right tool set and the right skill set and mindset, so that the bigger point that AI can be democratized for all. It doesn't have to be the super premium universities or rich countries or only one particular gender, right? Or only the big companies. So I think that is a point which we continuously want to challenge and harp on, that everybody can learn AI. Data science and AI can be democratized. So just a small video. I think I have two, but I'm going to just show one so that we have time left for the later conversation.
So I would say that this project was more interesting to me towards than other projects that
some of the students' experiences, but I hope the point which I was trying to make, that this kind of an opportunity, and you saw this is a real internship by the student working with an actual industry partner. So they kind of got by the school paired up with a real company, and the real company's data science experts or the business analytics and AI professionals worked with them. Very simple problem statement of industrial safety, and then they use computer vision to predict which worker in the construction site is putting helmet properly or not, right? As, again, a very simple example, and today you will see lots of such examples around the world. But the point is, this whole partnership between the real industry and the talent of tomorrow is critical for mutual growth, right? And that's the right thing from a democratization standpoint of this talent. Otherwise, what we had seen 10 years back or 15 years back, right, the digital divide, which is a big issue now, thankfully, I mean, still an issue, but it's reducing. But you do not want to create an AI divide or an innovation divide because of this. So I think COVID has given us a great opportunity of level setting everywhere. Everybody has gone through the same challenge around the world, and everybody is wanting automation now, right? So those inequalities are now lesser after COVID, hopefully. So if you really construct these models correctly on how to help the talent for yourself as well as for your company and your country, I think a lot can be unlocked. In this particular program, the Future Workforce Program, again, we take a much more deeper technical approach, so to say, bring in low code, no code tools. I'm sure a lot of you are exposed to that, like Azure and Power BI and stuff like that. We use a lot of data analytics, business visualization, Tableau, and those kind of tools also. Take a lot of use case approaches in this. I know that even in your some of the certifications, you kind of align your certification to the industry, like financial sector, healthcare, manufacturing. Now, if you have to start at an earlier age like that, you have to give a real example, a real use case, and a real project experience on this. So that's why we, like, you can see some of the use cases here. Predictive maintenance, or an HR example, let's say employee attrition prediction. So you bring that use case with no code, low code approach first, then introduce the concept of programming and Python and all that, and then bring a coding approach. And this particular example of employee attrition prediction, which is an HR use case, they will use linear regression as a tool, which they have learned earlier. So technical confidence being so critical for this purpose, for your current workforce or for the future workforce, providing them systematically multiple opportunities to learn and have fun with that. And that's why I take a simple use cases like this, bring the no code, low code approach first, and then kind of take it with the coding, I think is a great starting point. And then bring them in, beyond the technical part. I mean, the important point is the jobs of today and tomorrow will require technical skill plus social skills around AI, as we said, right? And then the career growth skills also, like system thinking, presentation, entrepreneurship skills, topics like this. So we kind of create and offer this entire suite of packages to our partners, government, academia, industry, so on and so forth. A good example of this, just to kind of give you, is in US. Community colleges will be a great example. In US economy, more than 50% of the workforce actually come from community colleges, not from MIT and Harvards and the mainstream engineering or mainstream, Ivy Leagues and others, but from community colleges. Now, if 50% of the workforce is coming from there, we want to really empower community colleges with AI skills. So this program is now, just in 1 year, taken by 17 community colleges. And there are colleges like Maricopa Community College in Arizona, where Intel is present. They have created a full 2-year new associate degree program just for AI. It's first time in US. So certification accreditation process, right? As you all know, is going through a huge change. People need micro learning, micro credentials, micro certifications on the spot, on time. People also need a new ways of this degree reconfiguration, like this 2 years of associate degree for community college itself, right? So we are witnessing all this kind of a transformation in the way people are learning, so that they can then apply it in their jobs, right? So again, I mean, in an interest of time, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but just to share with you, there are 3 broad categories of skills which we care when we talk about AI skill and AI democratization: technical skill, social skill, and the career growth skill, right? And bringing it all together for the future workforce. I also have another program for the current workforce, as I was explaining earlier, for displaced workforce like women who have lost jobs, or SMEs or micro SMEs who are at risk, higher risk of automation. So there's a whole professional track again, which we offer to the government, academia, and some of our bigger customers and industry partners and suppliers, folks like that, to kind of take these programs and offer it. I think I wanted to just share that hey, this is an important step, not just for one company. It should not be one company agenda. It should be on every company's agenda for your own success, because your own success is dependent on your own customer success, and the customer level transformation and disruption is only going to increase because of this double disruption of COVID and automation. So feel free to continuously up-level yourself. I think that is always a starting point. And from what I pick, IABC, IABAC, if I'm saying it right, IABAC is doing a great job in offering professional upskilling and reskilling solutions, which is super critical. Continuous lifelong learning, that's your only passport for success, right? And then challenge yourself and your ecosystem on what are you doing with that learning? How are you building it out, right? How are you really implementing it, right? For you, for your customer, and for your country. From Intel standpoint, we are here to help. If anybody has an interest, feel free to reach out to us. We're doing these programs in 15 countries right now. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. And I think I'm doing okay on time. We have 12 minutes left for questions or comments on this whole notion of democratizing AI skills beyond just big tech companies or beyond just big universities. So thank you for patient listening.
That's wonderful, Anshul. We'll slowly take up our Q&A sessions.
Sure.
Ashok, you can go ahead with the question.
Hey, hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Hello. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Anshul. It's a wonderful wonderful presentation. There is absolutely a value of democratizing and making all kinds of people, from students to professionals to organizations, to use AI. That basically gives you a lot of opportunities, competitiveness between organizations and governments and other things. But isn't it dangerous to the AI is a very powerful tool. Isn't it dangerous to just give this AI as a tool to everyone who is not well trained? What do you think about it?
Absolutely. That's the whole point here, right? I mean, if you leave it without training part, right, that whole issue of trust will continue. So that's why even when you train, you have to think about training not just from a technical standpoint, but from a social skill standpoint, ethical usage, responsible use cases, right? How do you debias some of these things? I mean, and that's has to be a part of a training itself. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. The conventional ways, you learn this somewhere else, and then you experience it, experiment it, and then fail. And then you build the skill, right? Or reskill. But with the kind of a pressure on economies and the businesses, you can't afford that now, because once you fail, you are out of business, right? So that's why it is even more important that this training programs or any skilling programs should not be only focused on the technical aspect of skilling, but also this responsible usage and the trust aspect, the social skill around it, explainability, ethics, inclusion, bias removal, all these things which are coming out more and more, right? These 2 things have to go hand in hand. Otherwise, what you say is absolutely right. And there are hundreds of examples of failures on this. And that's probably the big reason why people are saying only 4 to 5% of the actual organizations are using it. because they don't have that kind of a capability yet. They may have a technical capability, but they may not have a system thinking capability to really remove the biases, build a robust solution so that they do not, so that that trap, kills the business altogether. So you are absolutely point. If it is not thought through carefully, be it at an organization level or at a skilling level, that danger becomes even more amplified. In fact, I was just talking to Government of India in a couple of hours back in one of the program which we do, National Digital Dialogues, and I was explaining to them a real example of this, right? The ethical bias issue. And I was giving my own daughter example because she was just walked in. I just remembered it. So my daughter was doing a Google the other day. We were wanting to go. She's an 11-year-old. So she wanted to go for some fun activity, and she was checking beautician. And she had an African friend, close friend. So she checked beautician and went into Google image. And very surprising, Google image results, no African, no male. So are we saying, and that's a question asked by her to me, are we saying that the beautician has to be only white-skinned, beautiful looking girl? And African girls cannot be beautician, a male cannot be beautician? Now, I don't have an answer to that, right? Because I didn't design that system. But these are the kind of questions people will ask you as a business. So that's why that danger point is a great point, Ashok. That's why it is even more important that as we scale, we have to bring the balance of tech skill and the social skill, which is what we call as a power skill, right? So career growth skill and the social skill aspect together with AI tech skills. Otherwise, that danger is real for businesses.
Okay. May I ask a follow-up question? That's a great answer, great example. Thank you very much. In the same question, when we say train people, so we are trying to democratize AI, which essentially means that we're trying to make the AI easy enough for the kids and children and people who are not very skilled also to develop AI solutions. Something like, let's say, deep fake, deep fake. So you could literally create someone thinking about something really bad by using deep fake, like Obama speaking about something which, like, you can do it to anyone, any celebrities, any important person. And if teenagers do it, I mean, being a teenagers, they don't really care about compliances and other things. I haven't when I was a teenager, right? So when you make these things easy, does it really? How do you control this ecosystem? I mean, that's the question, actually.
Absolutely. That's a great question. See, I mean, whether we control or not, right? Since the tools are coming out over there, right? If you are a smarter, geeky kid, a typical 18-year-old, 20-year-old, and you want to do something of that sort, you will end up doing it in any case, right? So because the tools are there, for the tool, they don't have to come and talk to Intel or any tech company. They can just Google and get multiple tools for deep fake and all that stuff today. So at one side, as technology advances, that risk become real. And that's why from a responsible usage standpoint, right? You have to create that conducive policy environment, learning environment, and spread the message on the trust and responsible usage, right? It's not just about skilling people. It's all about creating awareness, even at that level, right? That deep fake is a real issue. So, I mean, one of my favorite example on that is callingbullshit.com or callingbullshit.org. I mean, there's a whole education program on that, on how can you really sensitize yourself, right? And it doesn't have to be only the kid. It can be even workforce on what is getting, called out as a bullshit in the whole data deepfake world, right? So there, again, you have to respond to it. You have to kind of build an ecosystem and the solution. And that's where the government and academia should play a much bigger role. That's where the industry should also play a much bigger role in spreading the stories, spreading the messages, saying that, hey, these are the real issues. That 0.1% people who will want to create something wrong, they will land up doing it. But that's where, I mean, think about it from the policing, right? Be it cyber policing or regular policing. If the policing of a country doesn't even understand this issue, they will never be able to responsibly respond to it. So the strategic long-term responses get a right capacity created, which can balance these issues out. You cannot stop the bad things beyond a point. There will be always that 1% or 0.1% people who will end up doing something crazy as that. But you have to have a systems and checks and balances of trust, responsible usages, right? by the policy makers, by the environment or that ecosystem of industry and academia to create checks and balances. Because you're right, you probably cannot stop somebody who's 17-year-old who has decided to just do it.
Thank you very much, Sure. Thank you.
It's a complex, wicked problem. It will take a lot of, because we are just at a start, right, in this entire journey. Only last 2-3 years, this topic has become much more global topic, right? Because it started hurting countries' competitiveness, because last 2 years people have lost jobs because of COVID and automation coming and hitting together. So awareness on this topic is very important. Then only you can start responding to it. And nobody has a cookie cutter answer. Every country, every business will have to kind of learn through this.
Hi, thanks, Anshul. We have a participant called Jessie. She wants to know how can democratization help us avoid falling victim to ideological bias.
Yeah. There are all kinds of biases, by the way, right? People bias, ideological biases, model bias itself, data bias, of course, as you all probably know. I think it's a little bit of a cultural issue also, right? So more and more you include people into this, be it in the skilling level or in the post-skilling work environment level. So for example, in company like Intel now, right, just to avoid that bias for any of our business solutions, right, using AI, we have very clear-cut mandated goals on while forming a team to have diversity and inclusion factored in. Accessibility, diversity, and inclusion have to be factored in right at a teaming level to the leadership level. So companies need to think out of the box to really incentivize the system to ensure that that trap of ideological biases, do not hurt your own businesses. So that's why the forming of diversity and inclusion is a core to AI success in a long run. I cannot say that I don't care whether in my team of 10 people, there are 10 boys from only one country or not, as long as my business results get delivered in 1 week time. I think those days are gone, because the point which you are making is a very valid point. One ideological bias hurts my product or my solution, my entire business can get wiped out. All of you would have read or seen in TV how Amazon had to go and change the entire hiring practice, like in a country like India or anywhere for that matter. One job, 10,000 applicants, right? And your chatbot cannot, if the chatbot has a bias because of history, that woman, one particular gender, one particular skin color, they have not applied for that kind of a role, so your chatbot is not filtering it out. It's practically impossible to filter out 10,000 CV for one job for humans. So you have to use chatbot. But then if you do not train chatbot to avoid this ideological bias or the gender bias, people bias, can be other biases too, like data bias or a model bias, right? If you do not think about it proactively, the point, what you are saying is absolutely bang on. It can destroy entire business. And we have enough examples of how businesses are getting penalized now and getting totally wiped out because of the biases and not paying attention to it. So there's of course a lot technically, as you know, debiasing algorithm, resilience algorithm to bring in more validity and stuff like that. But just create awareness, implement it, role model it, talk about it, right? I mean, more and more you talk about it, people will start understanding what is this issue and how this issue can hurt.
Hey, thanks, Anshul. We have a last question from Mr. Jasir. He's asking, do you have any suggestions for a minimum age to start learning AI?
Oh, it's an intelligence, right? At the end of the day, if you think about it only as a software and technology, then of course you can put 15, 16, 17, because that's where a lot of people start doing coding, programming, or nowadays data science material, right? At 14, 15 people can start getting in. But I mean, I do this kind of programs in multiple countries, and I can tell you China, for example, have AI in a primary school education also to some extent. Now, you may not want to go too technical. You may want to just kind of talk about some of these issues. MIT Moral Machine is a great example, which we use in our programs to make that point on ethics and biases, right, at a much elder age group. If you have never played that game, just go and play that game on MIT Model Machine. It will kind of open your mind and eye on, okay, why I have to be more inclusive, why I have to have more empathy, why I should understand the biases, right? And things like that. And that can be given at a much younger age too, because you're forming your own mindset around it. It's not just a skill set on tech skill or computer vision or machine learning or deep learning or supervised and supervised learning. You're really forming your own mindset around this topic on how to kind of think about it. How do I build my own intelligence on this? And that can happen at much more earlier age, but it's not easy. It will require a lot of participation by school education system, parents to understand it, teachers to play a role. It takes a whole lot of ecosystem to build a right formula. I mean, again, many countries are doing it. We have been doing a lot of work on this at an earlier age in countries like South Korea, Singapore, for example, yes, China, India, and so on and so forth.
Hey, thanks, Anshul. I think we've crossed our time, and anyway, thank you so much for your deep insights, and we gained a lot of knowledge about where we are heading in terms of democratizing AI as as topic for even governments and institutions. Everybody have to look into it. It's right in front of us, and thank you so much for your time. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll keep you posted on our future sessions going forward. Thank you so much for your time, Anshul. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I hope it was meaningful. Bye.
It was wonderful, sir. Thank you very much.